Heard even stopped Depp from making the payments to the charities directly, demanding that the money go to her first. This is a person with no credibility who used their words to destroy someone's life, and still some in the media refuse to take a backward step. Writing for The Guardian, Moira Donegan described the trial as an orgy of misogyny. She writes, "The strange, illogical and unjust ruling has the effect of sanctioning Depp's alleged abuse of Heard and of punishing Heard for speaking about it." Sorry, Moira and The Guardian, but they went to court over Heard's specific allegations, and the court found that her words were carefully orchestrated lies. The UK defamation case Moira relies on to continue giving weight to Heard's lies is not comparable to the US trial, as Depp was suing the British paper, not Heard personally. The Guardian itself even reported that the judge in the UK trial did not hear as much evidence related to Heard's credibility. And we all know that Heard's credibility has been shattered based on new evidence shown in the US trial, including the fact that she never fulfilled her multi-million-dollar charity pledge. But Moira ignores all of this and continues to link this one case to all allegations of abuse. It will have a devastating effect on survivors who will be silenced now with the knowledge that they cannot speak about their violent experiences at men's hands without the threat of a ruinous libel suit. In that sense, women's speech just became a lot less free. And this idea of free speech that the left now seems to cherish was flagged by Heard herself, who, facing the prospect of bankruptcy, now claims that her freedom of speech has been taken from her. "I'm sad I lost this case, but I am sadder still that I seem to have lost a right I had as an American to speak freely and openly." But The Guardian wasn't the only publication defending a person who is indefensible. And this is the problem with how many in the media covered this case. No one case should be representative of all cases. If you are a champion of women's rights, the Heard Depp case should not bother you. It is justice taking place. It doesn't set back women because not all women lie. It just shows that there are consequences for lying. Every allegation needs to be assessed on its merit. And if you find yourself wanting a particular court outcome because it helps your tribal narrative, then you are being disingenuous.
Telling you, if you lost memory last night of kicking me out the door with the fucker hitting me,
again,
and and your memory is gone from you kicking the bathroom door and hitting me in the skull as I was bent down.
I am
Wait,
sorry.
if you have those memory fucking divots.
I was upset. There was a lot going on, and I was on an Ambien.
Okay,
why are you obsessing over the fact that I can't remember it the way you remembered it? I said I was sorry.
Okay,
I didn't deny it.
I'm not talking about that. What I want, it's not to get you mad. It's just to get out of a bad situation while it's happening before it gets worse. In Australia, when we had the big fight where I lost the tip of my finger, at least 5 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms I went to
avoid talking to me. To
avoid
working it out. That's
to escape the fight.
You don't escape the fight. You escape the solution.
No.
You escape the solution.
No.
You escape figuring it out. We cannot work it out if you run away to the bathroom every time.
Listen to me. Listen to me. A boxer can't go 12 rounds without a fucking minute break.
I'm not giving you a minute break. You do it at minute 3 at the beginning of an argument.
No. There are rounds, man. And when it gets too fucking hairy, the ref splits them apart or whatever. But all I'm saying is, you can't have a solution if the argument just keeps mounting and mounting and mounting and mounting. I fucking go into the bathroom and sit on the floor. Bam, 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 here you come. I come out. Fight, crazy, escalated. I split again, I go to another fucking bathroom or a bedroom or something. Knock, 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 bang, bang, bang. You kept coming to get me. I said to Travis, I said to you, hey, tell Travis what just happened.
You told me to do it. You told me to. You said, go do that.
I said, no, tell him what just happened.
And I lied.
And that you punched me in the fucking thing. And
you figured it out.
And you said, no, I didn't. What the fuck are you talking about? And I watched you lie. And then
I didn't punch you, by the way. I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
You know, you've been in a lot of fights. You've been around a long time. I know. Yeah.
No, when you fucking have a close
You didn't get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you. I don't know what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this? I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are. That's the difference between me and you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you started.
You are such a baby. Grow the fuck up,
because
Johnny.
You started physical fights.
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did. So I had to
Because-
get the fuck out of there.
Yes, you did. So you did the right thing, the big thing. You know what? You are admirable.
It's a finger, man. Come on. I had a mineral can of mineral spirits thrown at my nose.
You can please tell people that it was a fair fight and see what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them, Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and
Yes.
it's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
Just a finger, man. Come on. I had a mineral can of mineral spirits thrown at my nose.
You can please tell people that it was a fair fight and see what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them, Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and
Yes.
it's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
I wish you the best.
Hey, why don't you fuck yourself? Go suck your own dick. You're used to it. Oh, listen. I'll write you a check for the extra sip I took. Is that okay? Stingy old fucking piece of shit.
You're the one that brought it up.
You did. You said don't drink my wine. That's mine.
I didn't say that.
Oh, you didn't?
I said I didn't think you were looking for anymore.
Rewind.
You.
You're a joke, man.
I've tried so fucking hard with you. I've tried so hard.
It away. Hey, if you ever learn this shit, 50 fucking something years, you're never gonna learn it. I hope to God, Jack's stepfather teaches him more about being a man than your fucking left nut.
Hey, that's good. You gave me some shit about my kids, just like in London that you designed. Never again. Stay away. You don't exist. You will not be getting my words.
No, please don't. You're gonna hurt yourself. Don't. It's okay. Please don't cut yourself. Please don't. Please stop. Please stop. Please. Don't hurt yourself, please.
No, I won't do myself at all.
Please. Go put your fucking cigarettes out on someone else. You fucking have consequences for your actions. That's it.
Shut up, fat ass.
Yeah, you got me there. It's early. It's quick. It's so you're not interested in not fighting. You are guaranteeing a fight. when you do that, and I've told you this so many times, you guarantee if you were interested in not fighting, you would be respectful if you needed the space you would be careful not to perpetuate the fight longer by saying, I need a few minutes, and then actually honoring that. How can I trust you that it will be a few minutes when you've done this in the past and disappeared for hours? You know, I got mad at you in Australia about this. I said, baby, I want to trust you. It's hard for me not to try and work it out. If you want to be the person that's like, I need to cool down, help me do that, give that to you. But I can't give it to you if you always let me down and fuck up and forget.
Because I gave you a time limit, because I said I'll be back in 3 minutes. So I'm just...
No, it's different.
If it happens...
It's different. You never...
If it happens, I'm just going to say, look, I need some time. And that's it.
I'm telling you, that will make it worse.
No.
I guarantee you it will.
If you're stuck in throwing punches...
I'm not talking about throwing punches. I'm talking about an argument.
Right. In arguments, you tend to throw punches.
I'm talking about arguments. I'm not talking about the times when it's got physical. I'm talking about arguments. I'm talking about arguments. I'm talking about arguments.
Yes, in our arguments.
Earlier and earlier and earlier. Now you split. You take off right away. You don't deal with the issue. You don't deal with the confrontation, and you split. Whether it is, and then you do it for an undeterminate amount of time. You do it without actually respecting. When you do give me a time, like say I need a few minutes.
Do you stand by your testimony and your accusations against Johnny Depp about abuse?
Of course, to my dying day, will stand by every word of my testimony. I think vast majority of this trial was played out on social media. I think that this trial is an example of that gone haywire, gone amok, and the jury is not immune to that.
You think the jury saw it?
How could they not? I think even the most well-intentioned juror, it would have been impossible to avoid this. After 3.5 weeks, I took the stand and saw just a courtroom packed full of Captain Jack Sparrow fans who were vocal, energized. What people don't understand is it's actually so much bigger than that. This is not only about our First Amendment right to speak.
But here's the thing about the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects free speech. It doesn't protect lies that amount to defamation, and that was the issue in the case.
Yes, exactly. You can't go into, the free speech does not protect you if you go into a crowded theater and you scream fire. We get the concept of free speech from the Greeks. My understanding of what that means is not just the freedom to speak. It's a freedom to speak truth to power.
But truth is the word.
Yes.
And that was the issue.
And that's all I spoke. And I spoke it to power, and I paid the price.
The Depp team argued that you were the abuser, that you instigated physical violence. Did you?
I never had to instigate it. I responded to it. When you're living in violence and it becomes normal, as I testified to, you have to adapt.
You say you were responding, but there is evidence. There are tapes in which you acknowledge hitting. There are tapes in which you say, I started the fight.
I know much has been made of these audio tapes. They were first leaked online after being edited. What you would hear in those clips are not evidence of what was happening. It was evidence of a negotiation of how to talk about that with your abuser.
But I am looking at a transcript that says, he says, you start physical fights, and you say, I did start a physical fight. I can't promise you I won't get physical again. I mean, this is in black and white. I understand context. But you're testifying and you're just telling me today, I never started a physical fight, and here you are on tape saying you did.
As I testified on the stand about this, is that when your life is at risk,
not only will you take the blame for things that you shouldn't take the blame for, but when you're in an abusive dynamic, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, you don't have the resources that, say, you or I do with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but when you're living in it.
But then there are other times, there's another tape where you're taunting him and saying, oh, tell the world, Johnny Depp, I, a man, am a victim of domestic violence.
20-second clips or the transcripts of them are not representative of even the 2 hours or the 3 hours that those clips are excerpt from.
Could your side have just put the whole 3 hours in then?
I'm not a lawyer. As I testified to, I was talking in those recordings as a person in extreme amount of emotional, psychological, and physical distress.
He says he never hit you.
He
never. Is that a lie?
Yes, it is.
With the case unfolding the way it did, some bigoted media outlets picked up Heard's perspective of the case and have been unable to separate victimhood from the female gender. If you are a snowflake, let this be the end of the road for you. Viewer discretion is advised, and we would understand why some people would label this video an orgy of misogyny. Your feelings do matter, more than anything out there. The said media outlets listened to all the recordings, remove everything else that transpired in the case, but still went on an orgy of misandry. How this went past the outlet's editorial team is just puzzling to say the least, just to hold on to the believe all women narrative, which obviously took a serious hit with the case. Donegan, in writing for The Guardian, argued, quote, the strange, illogical, and unjust ruling has the effect of sanctioning Depp's alleged abuse of Heard, and of punishing Heard for speaking about it. It will have devastating effects on survivors, who will be silenced now, with the knowledge that they cannot speak about their violent experiences at men's hands without the threat of a ruinous libel suit. In that sense, women's speech just became a lot less free. The trial turned into a public orgy of misogyny. While most of the vitriol is nominally directed at Heard, it is hard to shake the feeling that really, of course feelings, it is directed at all women, and in particular, those of us who spoke about gendered abuse and sexual violence during the height of the Me Too movement. The modest gains that were made in that era are being retracted with a gleeful display of victim blaming in a massive scale. Notice the need to keep the victim light on a woman even when it has repeatedly been established, by her own confessions, that she was the aggressor. It is becoming increasingly clear that the Me Too movement is heavily grounded on generalizations, with men being the abusers and women being the victims. At no point does this ever change regardless. One woman has been made into a symbol of a movement that many view with fear and hatred, and she's being punished for that movement. In that way, Heard is still in an abusive relationship. But now, it's not just with Johnny Depp, but with the whole country. Based on these remarks and the recordings from the case, does the Me Too movement now support abusers too? Even if the woman just confessed, on recording, that she started physical fights and he was trying to avoid her, she is still his victim? At what point in him avoiding her does he become the victim? Depp's frivolous and punitive lawsuit, and the frenzy of misogynist contempt for Heard that has accompanied it, have done a great deal to vindicate Heard's original point: women are punished for coming forward. What happens to women who allege abuse? They get publicly pilloried, professionally blacklisted, socially ostracized, mocked endlessly on social media, and sued. Wrath indeed. Forget the fact that Depp was called a wife-beater by The Sun, trolled on social media, and lost two of the biggest trolls in his life in Fantastic Beasts and Pirates of the Caribbean, which she actively sought to make sure that Johnny lost by approaching J.K. Rowling to get him off Fantastic Beasts, even though she claims she didn't want to ruin his career. She is still the victim of being blacklisted professionally. Now let's get to justifying her abuse. As is typical with domestic abuse victims, Heard does seem to have done things many of us would not be proud of. She fought back. Depp's outbursts and insults left Heard resentful, and angry with him, and sometimes she told him so. Of course, forget Heard confessing to starting physical fights and Johnny constantly avoiding her and her following him around. The whole woman responding to abuse thing just plays to the social perception of domestic violence, just like Heard did, with the man being the abuser and the woman being the victim. You can safely assume that Amber has sisters all over and they are relentless. The common argument that women only perpetrate abuse as a response to male aggression is not even backed by credible evidence but mostly by feminist efforts to maintaining the female victimhood status. Only 20% of female perpetrated violence or aggression is out of self-defense, while it might be hard to believe. 80% of female perpetrated violence is independent of their partner's actions. When they believe that the woman is the victim, Her response is perfectly justified. How about when the man is the victim as it was established by the recordings in the case? Do they unanimously believe that victims' responses are justified? No, they don't. They only believe in justifying how a woman responds. Following the string of abuse instances by Heard, Depp did send some not-so-nice texts that were presented in court. He did not tell her, he sent texts to other people. This is what the article thought of Johnny's response to Heard's abuse through the texts. They called the contents of the texts, luridly misogynist terms. For the record, women not only fantasize about murdering their abusers, they actually do it. And not even in self-defense in the moment of an altercation, they wait for the alleged abuser to sleep and instead of escaping the situation when the opportunity arises, they murder him. By the 90s, states such as California and Ohio allowed a woman to kill her sleeping husband and claim self-defense. In December of 1990, the governor of Ohio released 25 women convicted of killing their husbands or companions from prison. All the women claimed that they were victims of abuse. Other governors followed suit within months. Ohio became the 15th state in 1990 to allow women to murder their sleeping husbands and cite past abuse as their defense, of course with the husbands not being able to argue the case. Premeditated murder, often called first degree and the worst of its kind, then became permissible to women in the name of self-defense. Under the law, it is called the battered woman syndrome and it is perfectly legal since women who kill their spouses use it as their defense and get away with it. But men cannot even get away with fantasizing about it without being labeled misogynist. If a woman feels abused, she is allowed to murder her husband and will get away with it, just like in the movie, The Burning Bed. This case of domestic abuse was so extreme, that it set a groundbreaking criminal law precedence. It also was the inspiration for a movie starring Farrah Fawcett.
A marriage begins, full of sweet expectation. But it isn't long before the sweetness turns sour.
Told you not to go in town without me.
He really loves you.
Don't you ever know lock the door on me. Ever.
Domestic violence has a nasty way of becoming a habit.
You know how to behave.
He loves you. It's not really so bad, is it?
And society has a nasty habit of making excuses.
It ain't so bad.
Nobody's gonna help you now.
Some women, they have to put up with their men, especially if there's children. But mostly the men don't mean it.
Married to you anyway.
I love you.
Boy, you got a problem. Get out of my way. Come here.
Woman's got to take the bitter with the sweet, you know. Mickey loves you, Francie. Something awful.
Man, where are you?
This is the story of one woman who finally had enough.
Miss Hughes, I've been told that you committed murder. Is that correct? Was he hitting you when the police pulled up, Francie?
No. When he realized they were going to come, he went into the living room and sat down.
And what happened after the policeman left?
I had the kids wash and we sat down to eat. I remember my lip was stinging with the salt and it hit me. We were trying to be quiet and he was sitting in the living room. And then he came into the kitchen to get a beer.
School!
What was going through your mind, Francine?
It's hard to describe how I felt. I was thinking about all the things that had happened to me. How much he hurt me my whole life. And I thought about school. All that work for nothing. Whatever I did, Mickey would knock it down. And then I thought, about my kids. And how their lives were as terrible as mine. I thought, take them away. Just leave. And when Mickey wakes up, you and the kids will be gone. When Mickey wakes up, you kids will be gone.
Okay, Francine, let's go through this again. You waited till Mickey fell asleep. Is that right? Right?
Yes.
Then you took the kids out to the car, right? Then you got the gasoline out of the garage and you came back into the house, right? And you poured the gasoline around the bed and then you lit a match and ran to the car, right? Right?
Yes.
Okay, the kids were in the car and they were scared and crying and you started driving away. Francine, what were you doing? Where were you going?
I ran for my life. I ran for the life of my kids.
On March 9, 1977, in Danville, Michigan, Francine Moran Hughes set fire to the bed in which her ex-husband, Mickey Hughes, was sleeping. Mickey was killed and the house destroyed in the resulting fire. Francine was tried for murder, but the outcome of the trial was very unusual, as we will see. The couple had 4 children and Francine was a very loving mother, who had dreams of becoming a nurse. Mickey was very possessive and controlling and would not let her leave the house to study. Years of abuse. The physical, mental and verbal abuse was so severe, that Francine separated from Mickey several times. Mickey would urge her to return and that he would change. She would return and his good behavior was temporary. Her children often witnessed the violence. Eventually, it was too much for her to endure and she filed for divorce. The abuse persisted and escalated in the years after Mickey's recovery, and he regularly beat her and destroyed furniture. Francine felt that she could not remove Mickey from the home or move out herself, fearing that he would make good on his constant threats to kill her. Francine once said in an interview with People magazine, "I learned that if I fought back, it only made him more angry. I thought, well, maybe I could kill myself. But then I thought, if I kill myself, who is going to take care of the kids? Nobody could love them like me." Francine returned from a secretarial course she was taking, and found Mickey in a drunken rage. He refused to allow her to make food for their 4 children, and berated her about quitting school, which she refused to agree to, even after Mickey forced her to burn her school books. Later that evening, Francine again attempted to make dinner for herself and the children, but Mickey threw the food onto the floor. He forced Francine to the floor by bending her arm behind her back and made her clean the mess with her hands. When she was finished, he dumped out the trash can on the floor and forced her to clean it again. Finally, he forced her to agree to quit secretarial school. He then forced her to cook dinner for him and raped her afterwards. She suffered through this last assault until he finally fell into a drunken slumber. She decided to wait for her youngest child, Dana, to return home. When he did not return after some time, Francine decided to burn the house down to prevent her from returning to her life with Mickey again. She told the 3 children to put on their coats and wait in the car. She then poured gasoline around Mickey's bed and lit the gasoline. The resulting fire consumed the home. Francine then drove away and later arrived at the police station. With the children waiting in the car, Francine turned herself in and confessed to the crime. Francine was put on trial for murder in Lansing, Michigan. At the trial, Hughes was found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity in one of the first cases involving battered woman syndrome as a defense. Francine's lawyer was able to convince the jury that 13 years of abuse had left her in a state of guilt, fear and denial. These symptoms are similar to what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. The lawyer argued that Francine snapped and, in a moment of temporary insanity, killed her husband. Both the prosecution and the defense agreed that Francine's plight was sympathetic. For the record, this is what the comments on the movie postings look like, which would explain why governors are out there in America freeing murderers. Common sense dictates that public opinion shapes policy. And if this represents public opinion, and politicians want to be elected and re-elected, why wouldn't they free murderers? Judy Norman, North Carolina 1980s. Norman shot her abusive husband during a late afternoon nap while he rested before violently trafficking her that night. The self-defense argument Norman used in perpetrating extreme violence was challenged by the fact that she did not face an imminent threat with her husband being asleep. Now, the supporters of the battered woman syndrome argue that many miss the threat of violent sex trafficking that Norman detailed on the stand and the crisis that led her family to believe the lethal threats made by her husband. It was first acceptable for a woman in a movie to kill an abusive man, and that translated to real life, with the support of a group that constantly claims that nothing justifies violence. With the evidence provided in court, what if Depp waited for her to go to sleep, and in her sleep? Anyway, do you think the public perceptions would look anything like this? Do you think anyone would hear, let alone understand, where he came from? He tried everything to avoid abuse. Would the public have understood that? Or better yet, since Heard still believes that she was abused, what if she waited for Depp to go to sleep, took him out, and not on a date, and she came out with all the allegations that she did and everyone believed her, as we all did for the last 5-6 years? Then we wouldn't have a Johnny Depp to fight all the accusations 6 years later, and she would have gotten away with killing him since Johnny wouldn't have been alive today, and society would have just moved on. Women's rights groups would have hailed it as a major victory in the fight to treat violence-prone battered women as victims, and not criminals. Then they would have argued that she shouldn't even be imprisoned in the first place because women don't kill men unless they have been pushed to a point of desperation. This argument is even held by so-called batterer intervention programs used all over the United States. This is what the Duluth model, a model that is supposed to reduce domestic violence, thinks about female-perpetrated violence, and the model even prides itself to be evidence-based. This would explain why Heard had the courage to taunt Depp about coming forward and no one would believe him. Remember, all this even with studies upon studies documenting that women are equally as violent, if not more violent, than men. A third of women imprisoned for murdering a partner kill an incapacitated partner, that is, they are sleeping, in wheelchairs, or drunk to the point of incapacitation. 60% of these murders are premeditated, but more than half of the women who batter incapacitated men claim self-defense. 30% of women in prison for killing men have a history of violent offenses. When a woman kills a man, it is most frequently a man whose insurance policy exceeds his immediate ability to provide for her. While they argue that women kill due to lack of options, remember the hotlines constantly running on television directing abused women where to call. Almost every community has a shelter for battered women, and there are so many women's centers in the West, with the equivalent male centers being prisons. But of course, women don't kill men unless they're pushed to a point of desperation. You see, there's a reason why some people are hell-bent on maintaining this socially constructed perception of domestic violence. If women who kill their husbands in their sleep are to be regarded as victims and not criminals, this should always hold true. Anything that threatens this perception must be fought with everything. If a woman kills her male partner, she doesn't even have to prove she is a victim of abuse, at least with him being the perpetrator. Why? Because the dead don't tell tales. And that's why they are working so hard to maintain the social presentation of domestic violence. Anyway. Remember, feminists constantly say nothing justifies violence against a woman, but when it is violence against a man, yeah, she was pushing back. Not all women are alike, but feminism was supposed to let us see how we are all similarly vulnerable both to gendered abuse and the gendered application of double standards and unjust blame. Unjust blame, she said. Complaining about the exact thing she is doing. So as it turns out, feminism is about victimhood, and anything less than that is backlash against the movement. So for all those who think feminism is about strong and independent women, that was the first wave, not whatever we have today, because now it's about vulnerability. How can one person be strong and independent and also vulnerable, all at the same time? No victim is perfect, no victim should have to be. After all, if a man cannot be considered abusive towards an imperfect woman, then just how perfect does a woman need to be before it becomes wrong to beat her? How imperfect does a woman have to be for some of you to accept that women can be abusive too? If you don't believe a man has been abused and the aggressor is a woman in the face of recorded evidence, how about if the evidence was unavailable? Isn't that how we get to believe all women? Believe men is laughable, but believe all women is the law, as in the case of the Sun case in the UK. The forces of misogynist reaction are perhaps even stronger now for having temporarily repressed. Where once women refused to keep men's secrets, or to remain silent about the truth of their own lives, now a resurgence of sexism, virulent online harassment, and the threat of lawsuits, all aim to compel women back into silence by force. In some ways, one could see the defamation suit itself as an extension of Depp's abuse of Heard, a way to prolong his humiliation and control over her. Again, regardless of anything, in their eyes, Heard remains to be the victim. Confessed to being the abuser, filed for divorce days after his mother died, got a settlement of $7 million, went on lying how she donated the money to the ACLU and the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles to make it look like she wasn't in it for the money, turned the whole world against Depp. Actively decided to work towards destroying his career, took advantage of actual victims of violence in the name of representing them for selfish gains, but somehow, she is still the victim? Just wow. The way they talk about social media, you might think it is the worst thing on the planet. Remember, the Me Too movement was popularized on social media. The phrase Me Too was initially used in this context on social media in 2006, on MySpace, by sexual assault survivor and activist Tarana Burke. The hashtag #MeToo hashtag, representative of a social media trend which seeks to empower female victims of gender-based violence, has had a significant international impact. In fact, it viralized beyond the United States in countries where women have turned to social media to raise their voices for women's rights. All of it is on social media. When the phrase was becoming popular, of course they loved social media and the reach it provided. When social media doesn't serve their interests, then it's the worst tool. Remember, Amber was the one who publicized all this. From the confessions by the former DMZ employee, she allegedly sent alerts of where she would be. She testified to sending the video of Johnny smashing the cabinets, and she published this, which is the genesis of all this, in the name of countering Johnny's publicity, which was automatic because he was already famous. If you still think Heard has a problem with publicity or social media, this was her in the UK case where Johnny lost, effectively condemning him as a wife beater.
I traveled here to the UK to testify as a witness to assist the court. After obtaining a restraining order in 2016 and finalizing my divorce, I just wanted to move on with my life. I did not file this lawsuit, and despite its significance, I would have preferred not to be here in court. It has been incredibly painful to relive the breakup of my relationship, to have my motives, my truth questioned, and the most traumatic and intimate details of my life with Johnny shared in court and broadcast to the entire world. I stand by my testimony, and I now place my faith in British justice. Although I did not bring up this lawsuit, I am aware of the precious resources being consumed by his litigation. And I will be glad to see those resources redirected to more important legal matters delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic. I appreciate the dedication, the hard work, and support of the defense legal team, as well as my US and UK lawyers. I also wish to extend my thanks to the very diligent and kind court staff and the police who have been so sensitive in ensuring my safety, my protection, so that I could testify in safety. And finally, my heartfelt thanks for all of the tremendous and overwhelming outpouring of support that I have received and the many messages from all over the world. You have given me so much strength, and I send it back to you. Thank you.
She loved the support she got from all over the world, but once social media turned on her, then she didn't like it anymore. Now, it's the worst thing. Now it's a tool that is being used to silence women. So requiring women to be truthful and subjecting that truthfulness to due process is silencing women? So, not silencing women is believing all of them without exceptions? Should we take everything women say as the gospel truth? Is any scrutiny, even in the face of ruining someone's life by causing irreparable damage, a step towards limiting women's speech or victim blaming? So part of women's free speech is not being held accountable for one's actions? In other words, does holding women accountable, like we would any adult, limit women's speech?